Captain David Berry. I'm 86 years old, and I was born at Thorpe Langton. And this is in relation to a talk I gave at Great Bowden in 2005 to the Great Bowden Historic Society about my escape from Norway in 1940. We lived at Great Bowden at the time, and I thoroughly enjoyed meeting the people at Great Bowden. Several of the people I met I hadn't seen since my school days. And very kindly, Mr. Pendley has come over here and taken this picture with my medals, because I didn't wear my medals when I made the first talk, which the tape which you have got, which I gave to the Rugby Royal Air Force Association, but I was not wearing my medals at the time.
And very often we reflect on how things have changed since the time he was born and as things are today. And he told me the other day that his father had to get his horse to ride to Market Harborough to register his birth. And in the village where he lived, even after the First World War, it was several years before anybody had a car or a telephone. So, when David was shown how to put a radio together with a few simple components as a boy, that immediately opened up his horizon. And radio has been a hobby that's been David's lifelong interest, and he is a founder member of the Rugby radio station. Now, after his war service, he became a farmer, and 84 as he is, he still takes a great interest, as I know, going round checking the farm is in good order. I think I'm David's gates and fences man. In his time, he's sailed mirror dinghies and he's flown radio-controlled model aircraft. He even built the television set for his family to watch the coronation, and not many farmers can do that. He wages an annual war on magpies, and I've got a feeling if he could get his hands on Edwina Curry's throat, he'd ring her a load as well. Now, David has been my radio mentor for many years. And when I took my licence, it's changed now, but years ago you had to study and take a written exam, and that allowed you to work on the VHF and UHF frequencies. To work on HF, you had to take a Morse exam. And I knew David was teaching one chap on the air, so most nights we have a contact, and we're still doing the Morse code. And with this Morse, David has demonstrated to me time and again where you can get contact where you can't with voice. And with his super aerial system he has at the farm, he can talk to people in America, or at least contact via Morse, people in America to the west and into Russia to the east. Now, when two ham radio enthusiasts make contact and work backwards and forwards, we call that a QSO. And my total QSOs with David is approaching 500. And when he started, because I could only take E's and T's down, for those that know the Morse code, a dot for an E and a dash for a T. And he said, I've got 100 QSOs we can practice. And one night we had a chap from Warsaw, we had this QSO from Warsaw, great. But the next night we had a contact by David from Czechoslovakia. Well, if you want to practice W's, C's, Z's and X's, that was the chap. But the one QSO I will remember, because mostly it's what we've done during the day, and I'll tell you this before I hand over. David sent me this message on the Morse code, and I took it down. The cat has given birth to her kittens in the wife's hat. Okay. Now I think David's going to give us a brief talk about army, the way the army is constructed. He said we won't know as RAF people. If he's talking about a platoon or a division or a company, we won't know the number of men involved. So I think David's going to start off by passively reading a letter to us, and then a bit about the army, and then his war service. So I give you David Berry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Well, I'll start at the wrong end of it. This is a letter I had from the War Office, dated December the 28th, 1945. Relinquishment of commission. You are now graded E, which is you are permanently unfit for military service, due to being wounded in action. It goes on to say, and you are granted the rank of honorary captain. So I'm merely Captain David Berry of the Royal Leicestershire Regiment. I'm not often addressed by Captain Berry. The only letter I get through the post addressed to that is from the Regimental Museum wanting funds or the Army Benevolent Fund. And Captain Berry if they want some money. However, as granted, I was born in 1918 on a farm. I was a third generation Leicestershire farmer. There will not be a fourth and fifth generation because farming is so bad today. I went to Market Harbour Grammar School and I left in 1934. My father had to pay £3 10 shillings a term for myself and my brother, which was hard going when you weren't making any profit on the farm. I wasn't very good at passing exams. Shall I say, a mass, a map, a martis, a morris, a mant? Somebody knows what it means? David Beckham's shirt course, I think, when he scores a goal, isn't it? Anyway, as far as I was topping woodwork, and I could make radio sets and take them to school. Crystal sets and one valve sets. Because farming was so bad, I got a job. My mother got me a job in Leicester, in a shop in Leicester. The shop didn't close until 7 o'clock at night, so it was 8:30 before I got home, and there wasn't much to do except go to bed. One evening in April 1939, on the 9 o'clock news, it said, all those people who are 20 years old will be called up for military service in the 1st of July. And that was me. Because you've got to be in the services by midnight tonight. Well, what can you do at 9 o'clock at night? Joining the army at that time. And so I went to bed. I didn't mind being a lot teenagers are. New horizons. Anyway, about 10:20, my father and my brother woke me up. My brother, on the screen, he was in the Territorial Army. He's 2 years younger than me. And he was very keen buying the Sergeant Major beer and getting promotion. They woke me up and said, hey, you've got to come down and join the army. I said, I don't mind going in the regulars. But they persuaded me to get out of bed. We went down to the drill hall in Market Harbour. We found the colour sergeant still in the bar. Oh, can't be bothered with you tonight, boy. Come back tomorrow. I'll backdate it 3 days. And he did. Anyway, I joined the 3-inch mortar platoon. And that's it there. 3-inch mortar, there it is. It's a very inaccurate weapon, a range of about a mile, got a fast rate of fire, but not very accurate. And that's my brother. No, TA camp at Holyhead in August 1939. Notice here, First World War equipment, First World War bayonet equipment there. In actual fact, he's in service dress. Look, he's not in battle dress, that's service dress. And that's the word on the, I don't know whether that's me or not on the mortar. So, we were called up for the service report on the 1st of September 1939, and we went to to Barnard Castle, and that is the seat of Lord Barnard, halfway between Barnard Castle, the town of Barnard Castle, and Darlington. It's Raby Castle is the name of the place. The officers were visiting the castle, the troops of which I was one, visited in the stables. In fact, I was in the where they could train the horses, I've forgotten what it's called now. Anyway, it was very cold indeed. The conditions were not very good. Because of my interest in radio and fiddling with pieces of wire, they transferred me from the waters to the signal. You mind if I sit down? Yeah. You can't hear, you just have to shout. So they transferred me to the signal platoon, which is much more interesting than mortars. And we learnt Morse code, and we also learnt semaphore. Last year was in the Boer War, by the way. But it was very good exercise in PT shorts in the morning with the sergeant major shouting the odds and us doing the semaphore. And also we had a heliograph. A heliograph, I just looked it up, and then on the encyclopedia, dated 06. It had a range in India of 70 miles. It's a very narrow beam, purely reflective. I tried it in North Africa, but it wasn't very satisfactory when I was a signal officer, because the cloud kept going in. But in India, of course, you get bright sunlight 24 hours a day, and they had got a very good range on them, and I don't know what would have got in battle. The conditions that winter in 1939 were very cold indeed. Notice the snow is not cleared. I can ride a motorbike, that's my old motorbike. A rally, by the way, 300cc side valve, of all things. Anyway, that's on Christmas Eve, but the conditions up in Darlington were very cold indeed. Everything was frozen up. All the water taps and everything. And to wash and shave, we used to go across and put to a frozen cattle trough and put our shaving stick on the ice, break a hole, and wash and shave with the icy water. There wasn't any running water at all. All I can think of, if you saw that today, you know, 10 television cameras showing all around everybody want counselling, wouldn't they? Anyway, that's how the conditions were up in Raby. On the 27th of November 1939, my brother died suddenly. And that's his funeral. We went to bed on Saturday night with a violent headache, and he died at Sunday afternoon of meningitis, and they couldn't save him. They got him to hospital, and the army brought him home to Great Bowden, where we were at the time, and that's a picture of his funeral. Notice the full military honours, firing squad here. Notice no gaiters. Look at the old hearse with carved windows. But it was very traumatic for the family, of course. That is the only time I ever saw a soldier buried in a coffin. When I was overseas, if you got a wet blanket, you were lucky. But that time, almost peacetime. Remember, the war hadn't been on very long, and all these soldiers were at the depot. Talking about the depot, the infantry regiment, my regiment has been recruited in Leicestershire for 300 years. And the setup is this: you have a central depot, and ours is at Wigston Magna, and that supplies battalions, and the battalion is the main fighting unit of the infantry regiment, about 800 men. In the First World War, the depot supplied about 15 battalions. In the last war, we had about 7 or 8 battalions. And they were basically all recruited down Leicestershire. And went to the depot, and then they were sent out to the battalions all over the world. In the battalion, there are 4 infantry companies of about 130 men in each company, and in each company there are three platoons, and in the platoon under a junior officer there are about 32 men. I know the figures don't tie up, but it's near enough for this thing. The infantry company, under a major or a captain, under a lieutenant colonel, is the main fighting unit of the infantry. In February 1940, the Russians were fighting the Czechs, remember, and we were mobilised. That means they took us all together and gave us a week's leave to go to Finland. And of course here is Finland, the green one, see? And we were here. Well, no way could we get to Finland because we couldn't come through the Skagerrak and the Baltic Sea because the Germans were here. But it was cancelled because the Swedes would not permit us to travel through neutral Sweden there. That's the purple one. So in the end that war fizzled out. The Finns killed 200,000 Russians for a loss of 25,000 of their own. So they about killed 10 against the Russians. They fought very hard, but they had to give up some ground to the mighty Russians to settle the war. They gave up some ground down here and up at the top here. So that, then in April, about April the 5th, 1939, the French and the British High Command, remember the French were fighting on our side in those days. It wasn't in the days of Pétain when we were giving out our secrets to the Germans. The French had decided we would occupy the west coast ports of Norway, up here. Stavanger, Bergen, Namsos, Trondheim, up there. They decided they were going to occupy those. And the reason for this was this. Up here is very valuable iron ore, and the Germans are running their iron ore ships, and other ships, by the way, in the territorial waters down Norway, in here to Germany. We protested to the Norwegians about this, but the Norwegians, Quisling, remember, was a traitor, wouldn't stop them, and wouldn't allow us to stop it. We actually mined some of the area down there. Anyway, that was the date was interesting. We were going to occupy Stavanger on the 9th of April 1939.
1940 day.
I think about 1940, yes, you put me right, but wrong. Not a bit. So what happened to us was they set off from camp at Darlington, and we went to over the Forth Bridge, and then to Rosyth shipyard, which is there. And in the shipyard were 4 cruisers, battle cruisers, very heavy equipment. I don't know, 20,000 tons. And I was put on that ship with half the battalion, and it was very uncomfortable. I was actually entertained in the marine turret. The Marines, by the way, always had their turret, and it goes back to Nelson's day, between the matrows and the officers, because the Marines' job was to stop mutiny. And I was entertained in the marine turret, which is there. We slept on the top of the equipment. It was very uncomfortable. However, the next morning, at about 11 o'clock, we were all sitting down to the best meal we'd ever had since we joined the army, because the Navy did fever anyway. We were all sitting down there to have it. Quartermaster walks in. Right, pay attention. Everybody will move if you need to get off this ship. As you walk out of the bin, there's a bin here, dip your food in, move. We didn't get a mouthful. Never had any of it at all went in the bin. The matrows got our equipment, such as it was, and threw it off the ship onto the docks, all in the coldness. And the big ships, there was the Devonshire, and I think it was Suffolk. They were county, and I can't remember them all, but I was definitely on Devonshire. And in half an hour, the ship put to sea. The German Navy put to sea, and they went. They had to go and oppose the German Navy. We were taken off the ship, and we marched to camp at Dunfermline, and we were in camp for a week. And then they brought this ship, which is the, what's it called? Orion, there we are. It's the Orion. She's a 23,000-ton liner, cruising liner, in all its colours, just like that, all white painted. And they couldn't get under the Forth Bridge, so they left it out in the Firth of Forth. And they took us out on lighters, and they put 2 battalions, the Leicester, the 1st of the Leicester and the Sherwood Foresters on that ship. We were on there for 2 nights. I actually had a cabin as a soldier. I was an armed sportsman by that time. And then we were ordered off. Somebody decided that it was much too dangerous to send a ship like this into a battle zone. I wonder we didn't get bombed there. That was a wonderful target. Anyway, so they took us off. Much of our signal equipment, by the way, was lost in the hull of this ship. I was in the hull of that ship, looking for signal equipment. The doctors had just thrown in on par with everybody else, but I couldn't find the dumb stuff. It was absolutely bigger than ship. A lot of our equipment got left in that ship. Back to camp. The next day, after going to camp for 1 day, they put us on a train and took us to Aberdeen. They're pretty disorganised, the Army were in those days. They took us to a first-class hotel where they got tables lined up in the ballroom, and here we were in full marching order equipment with rifles and everything else. They gave us a wonderful meal in the hotel. They then took us down to the docks to wait to board the ship. That is St Agnes. She survived the war, actually. She's a small ship that was going around the islands of Scotland taking cattle and sheep to the islands. Anyway, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a businessman came and asked the commanding officer, have these men had anything to eat? So he said, no, they'll get something when they get on board. And he sent his van all around the cake shops in Aberdeen and bought them up and bought the cakes down for us for our tea. I wish I could thank you. I wrote to Aberdeen actually last week as if anybody knew, but I never got a reply. Anyway, the date now was the 18th of April 1940. So we must have about off these ships before we were on that. And that was the Friday evening. We sailed about midnight to go to Norway. When we passed Scapa Flow, we picked up other small ships and a large ship, a cargo ship called the Cedar Bank, with all our transport and all our food and all our ammunition and everything on it. And here was the position, the date, the 18th of April. The Germans got here on the 9th, look, they were here. And all these crosses are divisions, and in a division there are 10,000 men. Or probably more than the German division. So there was a division in there, Oslo, Christiansen, Bergen, Stavanger, Trondheim, all those places, Narvik. While we were messing about from one ship to another, the Germans occupied the place. We were going to Stavanger and they got there first. Crazy. Anyway, so they took us to Molde, which is here, which is not occupied by the Germans. And here we are, off Molde, which is a British destroyer, and British troops on the lighter the big ships could not get up the field to Ondor's Nest, but so that a lot of people disembarked in all day to get onto small ships. The sailors used to tell us on this thing, if you jump in the sea with this thing, it breaks your neck. You have to hold it down. They're made of cork and very uncomfortable to wear, and they say they're dangerous if you jump in the water. Anybody can't hear me? All right. Interesting thing was, in 1990 I've been back to Norway 3 times. In 1990 I was going back to Norway and I worked in ham radio, as Brian said, and I heard an amateur radio transmitted from Mouldy. So I said to this chap, hey, I know a bit about Mouldy. I went there in 1940. So this chap said to me, oh well, when your troops came by Mouldy in 1939, I was a young student standing on the dockside, and I saw your ships, and I also saw, the briefly saw it, shoot down 3 German Stukas. I never met him. I went to Mouldy, I never met him, but it's quite interesting to know that he was a retired doctor. About the same age as myself, wasn't he? Didn't he? Anyway, they took us from up, the little ship, the St Agnes, was able to get up the field to Ondor's Nest, and that is the little port of Ondor's Nest, as it is today. When we were there, it was like that. The Germans had bombed it. And notice the snow on the hills. Very cold indeed. And we disembarked on it first. There we are. But, we disembarked off there, and they put us in these railway carriages. They looked like the same railway carriages we got in 50 years ago. No difference. I took that photograph in 1990. Those carriages, we were put on those in that strait. That is the end of the line up the main valley of Norway from Oslo. Gudbrandsdalen is the name of the valley. And that's where the main valley. Now look what they've done. Here we were, Ondor's Nest. There it is there. They put us on the train and they took us right down here to a place called Tretting, which is not far from Oslo. Here were the Germans coming up the road. There were 1,000 of us, not all one good unit. Half the foresters and half the Leicesters, not a concise unit at all. The commanding officers had no idea. They hadn't got any maps. And they took us to Tretton there. And here they are getting off the train at Tretton. Look, arrival at Tretton. That actually is a mortar platoon that I joined up with. I know every man in that platoon. I was at school with that man. And I knew them all. Look, there's a train in the background, look. And there's just deep snow. And within 2 days, all that platoon prisoners of war. But they all got home. 5 years was a very long time to be in a prison camp. Anyway, they were terribly badly equipped. They'd lost one of the base plates of the mortar, so it was useless. And they'd only got one detachment had only got smoke bombs. They hadn't got any HE. All sorts of things happened. They took some Bofors anti-aircraft guns to Norway and they forgot to take the firing pins. No idea what chaos it was. We had anti-tank rifles, boys anti-tank rifles, and they were only half-charged bullets. It was absolute chaos. Anyway, now that is a picture of Tretton again. There it is. There's the bridge at Tretton. The railway station is there. That is the bridge there over the river. And then you see that line there with the wood there. Well, I was sitting in that wood waiting to get lorries to take us up. The Germans were up here about 5 miles up the road. And I was sitting in that wood waiting for our cars were all been lost, of course, all, I didn't tell you that. The cedar bank was torpedoed within sight of Molde. On that morning, there was a huge explosion, went up on deck, the cedar bank is missing. All our transport, all our food, and all our equipment had gone to the bottom of the sea, so we got nothing. Only a rifle and 50 rounds of ammunition, and a blue and white flag, when they were swimming. Anyway, we're sitting in that wood there, and the German bomber was flying up and down the valley, and every time he went by, he had a go at us. The rear gunner had a go at us. And I was sitting like this, and the chap next to me said, "Blimey." And a bullet went there, and one went there, and it went through the welt of his boot. It never hurt him. He's near as that. And that was the first time I was under high velocity fire. When you're under high velocity machine gun fire or rifle fire, the bullet arrives before the sound of the explosion. So you hear a crack of the bullet going over your head, if you're lucky, and then you hear the pop of the gun. So it's crack, pop, like that. And you can judge the distance, how far this rifle is away or machine gun is away when you're a trained soldier. And that was the first time I've been under high velocity fire, and it was going crack, 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 we went by about 4 times. We didn't do anything about it. Anyway, we went up, we got in and we went down here towards Lillehammer. It's about 10 miles from Lillehammer, Sutton. And that is the battle position I was in when they took us down there. Lillehammer was just round the corner, and we were in here, and the Germans were advancing up here. My wall is of absolute deep snow. And the Germans were coming up the road. If that picture was taken today, the Olympic ski lift would be here. It's made just there, about 5 years ago, wasn't it? So I was in the position here with my rifle. Of all things, I found, in a hut I found some oil. I thought, well, I'll put a bit of oil on the rifle. When I got here, I couldn't move the bolt at all. I had to get it kicked out, and it just would not work. I think I'd used linseed oil, which had only got dry and frozen, and I had to rapidly, with the Germans coming up the road, I had to rapidly borrow some oil to oil me bolt in the rifle. Anyway, that's the chaos. The Germans, of course, very strong. And that's how they were. Now that's a picture taken of the Germans coming up the road from Lillehammer. Notice the tanks, they've got tanks, you see. And always notice this man here. He's copied the idea from the Finns of a white helmet. And the Finns did so well against the Russians because they covered themselves in sheets and they couldn't be seen. And this man got a very good idea to have a white helmet. It's much more sensible than this. This is no go at all. It's purely put together for the newspaper man because trained soldiers do not gather around tanks because it's too dangerous. Anyway, that shows what the Germans were coming up the road, and they didn't bother with us. We just walked on. We couldn't invert it. They sent me into action with a rifle and 50 rounds, and a blue and white flag as a signaller. Actual fact, you could signal the blue, with Morse code, you could signal with a single flag, dot dash, like that, dot dash. And I jolly soon lost the blue and white flag, I don't mind telling you. We couldn't do any good. Anyway, the Germans came up the road and left us sitting there. We were in the woods for 2 nights. We had nothing to eat. We were feeling pretty fed up with the job. The officers got no idea what to do. They hadn't even got a map. And the company was disintegrating. And some of the chaps were going down to the Germans, because we were in the woods, giving themselves up. So I said, well, I'm not going down to the Germans. They've got to catch me. And I was wandering about, and I came to this house. it was very close to the main road. The Germans were approximately 100 yards just to the left down there. And the three of us slept in that bar. That's a cowshed there. We didn't go in the house because we thought the Germans would find us. So we slept in that barn, which now been made into a holiday chalet. There was some moss on the ground and chalmuck and everything else, so we slept in there. We listened very carefully in the morning before we came out. We could hear the German transport on the road, but we thought, well, it was safe. So we came out and went into the house, and we were searching for food, and there wasn't any. There was nobody even in the house at all. It was empty. The door was open. And I found this map. I tore it out of a school book. I found it in a drawer, and I just got it turned out. Two men walked in. They were very afraid of us. And they were the owners, two brothers. They were the owners of the house. And there wasn't any food. They had evacuated. And I got him to make a mark on the map where we were. I had no idea where we were. I knew we were in Norway. I had no idea. Anyway, he made that dot there. There's Lillehammer there, you see. And there we were. So, with indication as best we could, there were three of us. We decided that if we could go in this direction, we would find other occupied Norwegian farmers where the Germans were not occupied. So we set off over the hills in deep snow, and we came to this farm here, Mr. Rindall, there he is, and he was very good to us. He gave us a very good feed, and decided we would stay the night in that farm. There's the valley there. It's not far away. The Germans were just down in the valley. And that's the actual bed that I was going to lie in. We had the food here at the table, and then I got my boots off, lie down and go to sleep in that bed. It looks a bit small to me. I don't understand why the Norwegian bed is so small when there's such a big bloke. But anyway, I was lying in that bed, got the boots off, just about to go to sleep. The Norwegian came in an absolute panic. The Germans were searching the next farm down the road. You've got to go. So we got dressed again very quickly, and they took us to the mountains. The women had been evacuated to the mountains. There were small woodcutters' huts in the hills, and the women had been taken up there away from the fighting. And they took us up to the hut, Mr. Blundell did, and turned his housekeeper and out. Oh, that's my wife, by the way. I just put that in for interest's sake. Notice everything is made of wood. It's not like that now, that's 30 years ago. But notice everything made of wood. The bowls, the sieve, and even the mincer. It's a potato mincer, completely made of wood. It was their main raw material. They got plenty of time in the long winter evenings, so they could go on with it. And that's the lady they turned her out of her bed and put us in the hut in the mountains. There were three of us, and in 1972 I wrote to the newspaper in Lillehammer that I was coming, and the reporter found that lady and told the story, and that's all written in the local Norwegian newspaper. So we met her. So here we were up in the hills. Now this is in the hills. There are these called setters, and they're where the Norwegian farmers take their animals in the summertime for summer grazing. And of course it was all snow in our day, but these setters were being opened in wartime, and people were going up there. And so, now here we were, here's the setter here. We went up to here, and after 7 days in the hut, the Norwegians were bringing us food. We saw kept telling us that the British were coming back in, here's the river. The French and the English were coming back into Norway, and of course they weren't. All we could hear was the battle going further and further up the valley, getting further and further away from us. So I said, right, well, I've had enough of this. I'm going to try and get back to the British who are still in Andor's Nest at that time. So I set off in this direction. Here's the hut here. I set off in very, very, very bad conditions to here. And it was very hard going. That's the sort of snow it was. You can walk on it when it's frozen at night, but as soon as the sun comes up, if it's about as deep as this, the crossroad lets you down with a bang. And it was very unpleasant, and the older men and myself were floundering about in this snow, trying to get north to join the British forces. We'll go back. So we got to here, in the snow up to there, and there were about 10 of us in a house there, and I said, well, I've had enough of this. This was the route we were trying to make across here, quite impossible. I said, I'm going to get a civilian clothes, I'm going down to the valley and take my luck with the Germans. The one man, David Priest, said, can I come with you? And yes, we'll both go if you like. So we left the house up here, we went down to the valley, down to here. Here's the main valley here, and we got to there. And we got to that barn, and we went to the house and asked the people if they gave us some food. So they gave us some food, and we said, sober in hús or sober in úthús. Well, úthús is the barn, so we slept in the barn. They wouldn't have us in the house. Don't blame them. And they were very, very good to us. You must remember that if you're escaping in a country and the civilians are friendly to you, it's very easy, because they'll help you most of the time. We would never refuse food. Anyway, we slept in that barn, in hay. Next morning, we could hardly breathe. We got a touch of what's called farmer's lung. And the dust from the hay, it's in your lungs and stops you breathing. And after a bit, we got over it, but we were in poor state when we came out of that barn in the morning, and the good lady gave us some food, and we went on our route. There it is again. We were there now, so we got on the route here. And we got as far as there, stopped for a drink at a house, and they said, no British snow left in Norway. They've gone. Andor's Nest has been evacuated. Where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to Sweden. I knew Sweden was a neutral country, and would be a haven for us if you can get there. So, can you notice the contour lines of this valley here? They're very, very close together. Just there. The route was here, across the mountains to the next valley. And so we had to cross that. And there it is. This ravine here is 10 metres deep. 300, I don't know, whatever 10 metres is. But very, very deep indeed, full of ice and water. And there was see those two pieces of wood? There was a rope bridge. This was not here, this is all new. There was a rope bridge with a board about 2 foot wide and 2 pieces of rope, all covered in snow, for us to cross over here. Otherwise we couldn't go down to the valley because the Germans in the village of Ringerboot. So anyway, we got across, Prieston and myself. We then, the problem with Norway is, of course, the valley's going north and south, and we were going east, so we got to cross from one valley to the next. And the snow was very deep. We were going up, we had to cross over to the next valley, and we were going up the hill, Prieston and myself, and we came to the end of the housing where it got worse. We met a Norwegian captain who said, you make for the 2 pimples. If you make for those 2 pimples, that's the next valley. The distance is about 10 miles. It's a long way. There the conditions are, you see, when we were there. We set off at 2 o'clock in the morning and arrived to the next valley 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was very, very hard going. He gave us some skis, but we couldn't use them, no use of them. So we got to the next valley. The problem with the next valley was getting across this river. These rivers were full of ice and snow and logs coming down, and very dangerous if you got in them. We had to cross that bridge to get across that valley to the next valley. There's a picture of the bridge. It's fairly narrow. Atma Brew, I can see the top there. Atma is the only village of the village. We were sitting just down here. By that time, there were 5 of us. And I said, we can't get enough food for 5 of us. It's ridiculous. We've got to split up. I'm going. It's not fair on Norwegian asking to feed 5 men. And at that very moment, when we were sitting on the side of the road, sorting out our kit, a boy came over the bridge on his bicycle and said, Tiska, Tiska, Tiska. That's the word for German in Norwegian. Tiska, the station. Tiska, in the station. I said, Cronkey's telling us the Germans in the station. Anyway, so I said, well, I've got this far, I'm going. So I picked up my kit, what I'd got, and ran over the bridge as fast as I could, and 2 of the party followed me, Roland Pemberton and George Carr. I fell out of Prieston, by the way. He smoked, and he spent some money on fags, and I had bought food, and he wanted on my food. I got a bit sick of that. Being an honest smoker. So we fell out. Anyway, Roland Pemberton and George Carr followed me across the bridge. Here we are. We come down here, you see, down the valley, and there's a bridge. And can you see it? There's a bridge there, you see. And here's the railway, look. Well, the Germans were unloading the train here. This is a railhead. And there's the station master's house that's there. And we rushed across the bridge and got into these woods. For some unknown reason, we decided we wanted to drink of water. So we went to this house, went in this door here, and the women were only women in the house, and soon as they saw, they frightened to death. I've never seen something so scared in my life. Couldn't make it out. But I looked out of the window, there's a station there, and the Germans were just there unloading the train. And we took them out of the window, so they pushed us out of the door. And so that was the first narrow scrape we got. We walked up the railway line to the next village. How are we doing for time? How are we doing for film, all right?
Yeah.
All right. We walked up the railway line, and on the side of the line, and remember there was such a lot on Hardy pumping things out. That came along the line behind us, you see. Well, I daren't look up. We dived in the ditch and bowed down there. I kept my head down. But Roland Pemberton looked up and said there were Germans on it. Anyway, they were too busy. Either didn't see us or couldn't be bothered with us. We weren't entirely in British uniform. We got some and some didn't. Anyway, we got to we got to the next farm, slept in the barn, got a breakfast, and the next morning we walked further up the line towards the next village, going north, and a boy on a bicycle who spoke English came to us and guided us away. And the farmer we'd stayed the night with had been out early morning and found this boy, who could speak English, because the young could, and he guided us to the next town up the railway line. And he took us to a schoolmaster who was obviously waiting for us, and he took us to the hotel at the level crossing and gave us breakfast. And anyway, about 8:30, they came and said, right, you better get going quick, the Germans are coming up the line, you better get going. So he got 2 bicycles and 4 of us. And we had to go over the mountains to the next. It was a reasonable road, frozen ice, but you could ride on it. And there were 2 bicycles and 4 of us. And one bicycle got a back. So remember the step you used to have on a bicycle you could ride before, and a carrier. One bicycle got a step, so that could take 2 of us. But the other bicycle could only take 1. So somebody had to walk. And we wrote a system what my father used to call ride and tie. When he used to go to school on a pony with his brother, and 1 pony and 2 boys, they would ride, one would ride the pony ahead and tie it to the pony to the gate and walk on, and the next boy would come on, pick up the pony and ride on and catch him up. It was a ride and tie system, and we worked that system on the bicycles going across to the next valley. The old member had told me late after the war, he didn't like being left behind. Anyway. Right, we got to the next valley, and we were here on the hill. There's Sweetens up there. Mind, all this was very, very bad snow, very, very cold, and freaking snow. We slept in this barn here, one of these farms, I don't know which one, that one I think. We walked over the bridge here, see there's a bridge across the river. It was daylight, and the Norwegians who got the bicycles guiding us, and he said, I will signal when it's safe for you to drive, because the Germans were on the road which is here. The German transport was going up north. And anyway, we got to about here, and the German staff car came up the road. And I said to these Norwegians, I said, you better run, you know, you'll get shot if you'll get found then. Carry on, and walked on, and they didn't take any notice of it. We were a bit lucky again. But anyway, after sleeping at this farm here, we got to get in that direction east. But it was too difficult for us. I wouldn't go in on the high mountain without a guide, just the 3 of us. So we went south in this direction on this side of the river, along here. It was very difficult going. There were many streams coming down the mountain with ice and snow, melted snow, and we had to keep wading through these streams. What we did, we took our boots, our socks off, put our boots back on again, so we got dry socks to put on when you get to the other side. That's a recognised way to cross the river if you haven't. There was a man called Sergeant Farley in the regiment. He had to cross the river like that, and he took all his clothes off, put them on his head in his ground feet like that, off his stumbled and lost his clothes. Anyway, we went to a farm, absolutely starkers. They looked after him, and he survived the war. But that's the way to cross the river. You take all your clothes off and leave your boots on and walk across. And that's what we did. Anyway, we stumbled down here, going over these little streams, there was a guy up and down here. And we did about 5 miles. It was very, very hard going indeed. We were absolutely done for from about 4 o'clock. And we came to this little house. There we are. That's the house anyway. There's myself, and that's Mrs. Harmison. Then the photograph would take us, she's 84 years old. And she took us in, 3 hours, and gave us a very, very good meal. And the bed in that room there, she and her husband took a terrible risk because our landlord, who lived opposite, were Nazi sympathisers. In fact, the old man got put in prison by the Norwegians after the war for helping the enemy. And so they took a terrible risk, Mrs. Hamilton and her husband did. Anyway, they gave us a good feed, a good breakfast next morning, and we set off again. There we are again. See, look, that's the Norwegian paper. And there's the house. And here am I operating my, what we call a QRP, but very low power, Morse code set, back to England. Every day I took this with me, I made it myself, I took it with me, and I used to come on the air every day day at 2 o'clock, I was putting an iron up in the farmyard, wherever I was, and I had a schedule, we call it, with my friend George, and I contacted him most days on North Coast from that little set running off the car battery. It's only about 1 watt anyway, but it worked. That's how Mrs. Hamilton lived there. That's her house is there. The Germans were here, and there the hills we came down, stumbling down those hills down there. And this was completely frozen. In fact, a farmer drove his horse and cart across the ice, if you know what it's like. So we were still going east, and we went. The next day we made, the road was east. It's not open to motor traffic, but you could walk on it. And it wasn't like the Germany, to be honest, but there wasn't any transport on it. We did 26 miles that day, the three of us, to the next village called Bloodfellow. And we went to when we got to that village there, we went to the first house, and they weren't very happy with us. They sat us down and didn't give us anything to eat. And all Norwegians are armed. They are now, by law, they have to have a rifle, and they've all got a rifle. And we sat in for an hour. We were getting a bit worried that they weren't talking to us. Anyway, in the end, they fetched the chairman of the council, the mayor, whoever he was, who lived in this house, and he came to us, and he was very kind to us. And obviously they didn't know what to do with us, and they went to ask this bloke what to do with these blokes. And we sat in that room, the three of us, and the next morning, the man took us to the top of that hill there. There's a radio mast on top of that hill now, you can see it, called Globsborg is the name of the mountain. And he said, right, Sweden, and we could see Sweden. So we could see exactly where we were going. We moved, we went off, stumbled off that hill. We came to this barn. We went to the house. They were afraid of us, but she gave us some food and said we could sleep in the barn. We slept in this barn. There were 6 cows underneath the barn, and we slept in the top here, in the hay, in the top there, and the cows were underneath. It was very cold indeed. Our boots were completely frozen. We couldn't get our boots on in the morning. We had to walk around with our feet in our boots like that until our feet warmed up with leather before we could get our boots on. And then she gave us some food, and we set off for the Swedish border. We were by this time about 7 miles, English miles, from the border. Now here we are. There's Globsborg there. That's the mountain we're on there. This is Sweden here, you see the blank. And the road, the Germans were on the road up here like this, and around the top of the lake, there, that's better. There's a lake there, and that lake goes through into Sweden. It's half in Sweden and half in Norway. Well, the Germans were at Bloodfellow, which is a village on the Norwegian side, so we couldn't go along the road. We crossed over from here, south of the lake, in the hills, to get into Sweden. And that's a picture from the Norwegian side. That's Norway, that's Sweden. And there's a line of trees, which you can't see on the photograph. There's a line of trees up there like that, 50 metres wide, which is the frontier. The frontier with Norway and Sweden is very slack indeed. Anyway, we were walking through these woods across here. Remember, this lake was frozen. You walk across here easily. We could see the tracks where the Germans are walking across. So the Germans are manning the frontier here, and the Swedes were here. And you could see the track here across there, and they were patrolling that area. We suddenly found ourselves in this area with all the trees cut down. So I said, run it, it's the border, we're there. So we ran like hell, and then we saw the Swedish flag, which is after the British flag is home to me. It's the blue with a yellow cross. And the idea of going to Sweden was not to get captured or taken prisoner, whatever it was to get up to Norway where the British still were. How long we were going to do it, I don't know. But that was our object of the exercise of going to Sweden. Anyway, the first bridge we got to, we were arrested by the Swedish soldiers, and they gave us a good fee. They were very happy. They were happy. And they took us to the customs house. That's the customs house there. On the Swedish side is the joint customs house. That side Norway, that side Sweden. We wouldn't walk. We said to the troops, hey, we're not going that way, we're not going that way, we're going to hand us back to the Germans. We just sat on the road, and to hell with you. And anyway, they fixed an officer who could speak good English, and he said, well, it's all right, I'll go with you. So they took us to that customs house and examined us for contraband or something like that. Here we were under armed guard. They stamped my pay book. And I've got it here, this is my army pay book. And it says here, Birmingham, the 13th of the 5th, 1940, entrance Birmingham. 50 years afterwards, when that photograph was taken, I went into the same customs office and said, hey, stamp my pay book, will you? I've been in Sweden 50 years. Actual fact, it's not manned all the time, they don't man it very often. The border between Norway and Sweden is basically open, no problem at all. Anyway, that's a bit interesting. But he was a bit dull, the chap for us. He didn't think it was funny at all. But he did sit down good for me. Right, where did we go? Right, so we were in Sweden. There we are. And that's how we were dressed. That's me on the right. Notice the leggings given to the farmer because my boots were worn right through. That's a little jerking khaki scarf. Got my hat. George Carr, Roland Pemberton. Roland Pemberton had a telegram on the boat laying over. His wife had just had a son on route. He came over the wireless. So there we were. That was taken by the Swedish soldiers. That's the end of the first lot. Oh, 50 years later. All over again. Taken from George Carr. I wish I put my teeth in, I think I'm that like that. Right, that's the end of the first lot.
Have we got just 10 minutes left? Do we have to be clear enough just now?
Yeah.
If we can do it in 10 minutes, can we?
All right, well, we'll skip it through. We'll skip it through. A soldier was fighting company in a neutral country while the Geneva Convention is bound to be locked up. The country not allowed to wander about. So they put us in camp. There it is. And that's the camp we were in. A place called Fara in central Sweden. The food wasn't too bad and they were very friendly to us. That's the picture of the camp and they're the British officers. The officers didn't have to be in the camp. They could have gone out. They could give their parole, but other ranks could not. That's a bathing party. I want to show you. Notice the soldier here, in full winter equipment, in all the heat, look up, you see. He was so hot, that poor chap, for him. We carried his kit and his rifle back to camp for him, because he was too hot. And when he got back to the camp, we gave him back again. About July, I met this man, Victor Pitch, on the way down, and he rang me up and said, can you come for the weekend? I said, well, no, I'm under armed guard. They rang up into camp. Anyway, they gave me a pass. And I went by train about 80 miles to the north to a town in Murrah, where Victor lived. And he met us. And that's the picture we took at the time, of Vic and myself. Notice the uniform. That's a Swedish guy walking out uniform that they put us in. 50 years afterwards. Vic and I again, I met him several times, he's dead now. There's the bicycle he's from to his home. And that's where he lives. I think it's the same bicycle. And notice the ladder for fire precautions. It was all made of wood, so you have to have it big fire precautions. Right? I got him to draw that circuit for me. But no, I couldn't make it at the time. I can make it now. And it's a transmitter and receiver. That's his card. He gave me in 1914, that's his model one. He worked for SAS Swedish Airlines. That's my particular friend. He joined the RAF and was killed in the bomber. In July, the Germans were given permission to go to Akureyri, North Iceland. We were sailing up the field, and a gun fired, boom, shell went boom into the water. The British Royal Marines had not been told to expect us. Anyway, so after much telephoning, they took us round to Reykjavik, and we were back into the Army. And then we came back to England on the Altamont, a very fast ship. And there we are, that's how I was addressed, you see, all we got back to the depot in London. We gave them 7 days leave, and I misread my pass, and I was 24 hours late. The signals all got sent to one company, and I got sent to another company and stripped of recycling, or the recycling made a cut on the floor blasting. And deprived of last night, so I'm back to private again now. Anyway, I did lucky really by doing that, because all the other chaps got into Singapore and got put in the bag with all the signals with the Japs. So I was lucky. That was 1940 we got back, you see. 1941, I was commissioned second lieutenant, went up to and back into the regiment again. And we went to North Africa, Tunisia, and did a lot of fighting there. And only 2 things I can remember. We took part in the Battle of Kasserine. The Germans broke through the American lines at Kasserine, and we were 10 miles back on hills, and the German tanks came in into our positions. We couldn't dig in, we were on rock. And I was sitting on I was anti-tank officer by that time. One of my chaps said his gun wasn't any good, so I went across and looked at his gun, and sitting on this gun, and a German tank came down the road, and it started to shoot up the doctor's truck. So I said to the chap, come on, put the shot in quick, and we got 2 shots off and stopped him. And we did actually knock out 3 German tanks, and it stopped. The bomber was coming up there, and he was out of petrol. He was right at the end of the extreme. But if we hadn't been there, he would have got right through. That is the cemetery at Major Del Val. It's a fairly nostalgic exercise, walking around war cemetery, looking for the blokes that you knew. And I was from one other episode. We went on a patrol one night. Major Crips were with us, and there was a dark patch on the ground, and the thickest stone up like that. What's in there? And it landed on a German soldier's helmet. And they started shooting at us, and we started shooting at them. And my sergeant got hit in the arm, just here. and he was in very poor state. And we got him a bit further, we couldn't carry him, so I went back to the battalion positions and got the stretcher bearers and went back to find him. And we got the wrong side of the whole minefield, so I had to cross the minefield to go and find him, cross the minefield back again, and back again with the stretcher bearers to rescue him, and I got mentioned in dispatches for doing that. Unfortunately, he died. And that's his grave there. That's the that's the cat badge up to see, artilleryman, Royal Engineer, that's just a civilian. Finally, we did a lot of fighting in Italy. Right up to the Gothic line. One night in September 1944, we were coming up this road. Anyway, you can see it. We were coming up here, the Germans were here. It was dark at night. We got as far as here, and we had quite a lot of casualties. Got one man got his hand blown off. Another man was sticking his rifle in the guts of a German. Shall I shoot him? Shall I shoot him? No, you don't shoot prisoners. And I was standing just there, and you could see the pock marks. We were being heavily mortared. There was a pock mark on the wall there with the mortar bombs that were dropping around us. And one mortar bomb dropped quite close to me, and I got a piece in the leg just here. I passed out completely, and they put me in that barn. They took the trousers off and put it down to blood. They thought the artery had gone, because it's right next to the artery. And so they thought, well, they could take me back. And the company, by that time, withdrew 200 yards back there. And next morning, I came to in the daylight, I drank some water from my bottle. And can you see that tile there? There's a new tile just there. There's a hole in the roof, and a mortar bomb had come through the roof and was next to me, and hadn't gone up. It was absolutely lucky. Couldn't believe it. I didn't know much about it really, but my leg was gone. I couldn't move my leg at all. It was paralysed. The nerve had been damaged. I got out here on my hands and knees, and the bullets were flying ragged all over the place. There was a battle going on. And I thought to myself, well, I crawled, not to the English, so I crawled on my hands and knees down this track here, and the Germans taking pot shot at me. Their backside was towards them. I don't think they could stand it. And with a million bullets, it was woof, like that. The side of me. So I rolled over into the bushes here, and that's a bridge there, and there's a little stream there. With water, and I was lay in the stream all day, drinking the water. And by the time it came to evening, I thought, well, I'll stop here, the Germans might pick me up. I'll try. So I found a bit of stick and used it as a crutch. And I was able to hobble 50 yards at a time and then fall over the tree. And I got somewhere about 100 yards back further there, and I don't remember anymore. I know that Sergeant Smith found me and carried me back over the river and put me in a barn. But he had to come back to look after his unit. And somehow I got to, I don't remember going anything about it, but I found myself in a house, and I was trying to find a bed, and I heard somebody outside with voices, and my own company, they'd been withdrawn. The battalion from 800 men was down to 140. So they had heavy casualties, and they put me on a stretcher, and I woke up in hospital next morning. First thing I did, of course, is my leg was on. And I did know that if your leg is amputated, you could still feel it, you could still feel a wiggly toe. And I was pleased to find my leg was still there. And I was brought home in hospital sick. I never, my leg was quite useless for a long time. I didn't walk for 6 months, and that was 1944, September 44. The final picture is the Leicester Mercury, the 28th of April, 1945. Noted? That's our wedding day on the Leicester Mercury, 28th April, 1945. End of story.
You had no money, but you saw life.
How is the draw up? 466. Pink.
Good.
Pink 466.